So what you have in front of you is a piece from the Bnei Yissaschar. The truth is, I've learned this, I think, came out every year. It's Kedai de Chazer again and again and again. It's on the month of Cheshvon, which I know we're almost done, but we still have time. And the Bnei Yissaschar really opens up like the Maila of this month, and we still have, like I said, we still have time till next Monday for all the things that could happen in the month of Cheshvon to be revealed. So the truth is, like I said, I've learned this a couple years ago for sure, but I chaz it over again and again and again each year, and it's kedai. So you have in front of you this is all from the Bnei Yissaschar. I put it in my own order, but these are all the words of the Bnei Yissaschar on Cheshvon. No one talks about Cheshvon other than Bnei Yissaschar. The Bnei Yissaschar says like this. He starts off the piece with the following line. And anyone who's learned Bnei Yissaschar, he starts off every month with like a Kabbalistic quotation. And that's why I used to get scared off. I remember Mr. Zalmanowitz, he has a chavrusa for a very, very long time. I'm not going to say how long because he'll listen to this and he'll tell me how long. But he has a chavrusa with Tony Davidson. They've been learning Bnei Yissaschar for a very long time. He actually was the one who bought me the set that I use today. As I think Tony Davidson bought it for me. One of them bought it for me. Whoever it was. I don't remember. And I remember asking him, like, how do you learn this? It's Mamish Kabbalah. He's like, no, you got to get past the first paragraph. So he starts off Cheshvon with the following line. It's Mamish a Kabbalistic line, but if you start like looking at it, everything Mamish makes sense. He says like this. He quotes the Sefer Yetzirah. Now the Sefer Yetzirah is attributed to Avram Avinu or Rav Akiva. Either way, it's pretty good. It's Avram Avinu Pashtus. And Avram Avinu said the following about the month of Cheshvon. The following line. It will make no sense, but over time it'll make sense. Hamelech ois nun bereach. Hashem carnated the letter nun with aroma. Kosher like keser, put a crown on it. Tzarfa and zebezeh, combined it together. Tsar by akrav ba'olam, he hung the scorpion. That's the constellation of Cheshvon. Mar Cheshvon b'shana v'dakin b'nefesh. And Cheshvon in the year is the intestines of the soul. Those are the words of the Sefer Yetzirah. What does any of this mean? So let's start. Let's go through each line, and you'll see. Himlich ois nun bereach. Hashem carnated the letter nun. So this the Bnei Yissaschar doesn't say Rabbi. I think this is Pasha what he means. The letter nun. What does the letter nun mean? So he writes in Maramakan number 3. Yesh lahaktim. The Bnei Yissaschar begins his conversation on Cheshvon with the following phenomenon. We know that Cheshvon is the only month that has nothing. No Yom Tovim, no Tanesim, no nothing in it. So I saw someone sent a GIF in the beginning of, right after the war, the beginning of Cheshvon, that maybe it has no month, it has no Yom Tov because it's plowed open for new Yom Tovim that are going to come. So there's some depth to that. So he starts off, before we get to the good part of Cheshvon, there's a historical phenomenon. He quotes Rav Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. He says B'Shem Rav Menachem Mendel the following: Einenu royes, we see with our own eyes, says the Bnei Yissaschar, Kol hagzeres hamischadshis al soini Yisrael min hamalchius b'chenesinas hamasev arnunius. That if historically you were to look, the difficulties, the gzeres royes against Klal Yisrael, and the taxes, all the negative decrees from the kingdoms, they're always in Cheshvon. They all start in Cheshvon. Historically, they always start in Cheshvon. So why is that? I saw recently that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you could check, I thought I did check, but I think Kristallnacht was in Tesvav Cheshvon. Cheshvon is always a very, very difficult month for Klal Yisrael. So you'll say, because it's the one month that doesn't have Yom Tovim to protect us. But why is that? What is so empty about Cheshvon? V'amr hatam, and says Rav Menachem Mendel the following: the source of all the problems of Cheshvon is from the following phenomenon. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a kingdom, and that's the kingdom of David. But we know that something terrible happened, and there was a split. That the kingdom of David split away from the kingdom of Yisrael, that the Jewish people elected a new king called Yeravam ben Nevat. And this was a terrible, a tremendous civil war that erupted. Yeravim ben Nevat was terrible. He caused Avodah Zarah and very, very terrible things. And that was really the downfall. The split between Malchus Beis David and Malchus Yisrael was the downfall of Klal Yisrael's history. Because Klal Yisrael was rejecting the kingdom of David. When did that happen? What month was Yeravim ben Nevat elected? When was he coronated as the new king, replacing the kingdom of David? David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. He was replaced in what month? Says the Gemara. The pasuk says in Malachim, "V'yamlichu es Yeravam v'yasaram zachog b'chodesh hashmini." The 8th month, and if you count from Nisan, the 8th month is Cheshvon. B'chodesh asher bada meliboy. The chodesh that comes from the liboy. Says Rashi, liboy are the same letters as Bul. Beis Vav Lamid, and Bul is Cheshvon. Bul is the month of Cheshvon, as the pasuk, as we'll see in a moment. Why? Rashi says Bul ze mar Cheshvon. Bul is Cheshvon. Now, by the way, just agav, if you want to know why the letters Beis Vav Lamed, if you look it up in Art Scroll in Chabad.org, they translate Bul as B-U-L. Bul. It doesn't have. It's the month of Cheshvon. Why? So Rashi says because Bul comes from a lashon of mivala, which means to decay, and the grass begins to decay during this month. But Bul is Cheshvon. So the month that Asher Boda Meliboy, which is Bul, the month that Yeravim ben Nevat was elected, the new king of Klal Yisrael, was during Cheshvon. So says the Rabbi Menachem Mendel, Al Kain, Gezeres HaMalchus b'Mar Cheshvon. Because Mar Cheshvon was the month that we elected a new king, where we rejected the kingdom of David Hamelech, therefore that's the month where historically all the negative kingdoms have attacked Klal Yisrael Lo'aleinu. And it's Mida Keneged Mida. You reject the kingdom of David, so Hashem says, fine. You don't want David HaMelech, you want a replacement, so I'll give you this, and I'll give you that, and He'll give you Germany, and He'll give you America, and He'll give all these things. And that's why all the terrible decrees happened during the month of Cheshvan. See, he doesn't speak this out, but I think it's a Davar Pashat. The letter Nun is from Neuflim. It's a letter of Nefila. It's the one letter that's not in Ashrei, because it's a falling. So the letter Nun, the month of Cheshvan, corresponds to the letter Nun, because there's a falling, there's a Nefila. But what does he say? Hamelech ois nun. That the letter nun is coronated. You see, the month of Cheshvan, and this is the main point, the month of Cheshvan, while it is the month that we rejected the kingdom of David, which, by the way, not just is a terrible thing because to reject the kingdom that will last forever, and it not just is a rejection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, but it's also a tremendous act of sinas Yisrael. There's no greater lack of achdus. David HaMelech unites Klal Yisrael, and therefore to ask for a separate kingdom is a split, a civil war mamish, that happened during the month of Cheshvan. But as we know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a wondrous way of doing things, and that is that the very thing that is your downfall is also the thing that lifts you up. Right? We know that Rochav Azoina, right? She would lower men with a red string into her bedroom. But what does the pasuk say? When they saved her and her family, the sign that to save her was the very red string. And Rashi says that's the thing that caused her downfall, and that will be the very source of her rebuilding. The month of Cheshvan is the month that we rejected David HaMelech, and it's a nefila, but himlich. But there's a kingdom of the month of Cheshvan. How so? And this is Maramakim number 4. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, a very, very amazing medrash. Not medrash, mefurish medrash. Yedua b'medrash. The medrash says as follows: Hamishkan she'asa Moshe, that the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu made a Mishkan, right? We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to make the Mishkan during Sukkot, right after Yom Kippur. He comes down with the command to make the Mishkan. They started building it right away. When did they finish? Nishlam b'Kislev. It was finished in Kislev. But when did they open it up? When did they inaugurate the Mishkan? We know it was in Nisan. But says the Medrash, Tziva Hashem Yisbarach lahamtim b'chinuchay Nisan. The Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu built was finished in Kislev, but it was not inaugurated in Kislev. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, wait till Nisan. Why? Because Nisan is the birth of Yitzchak Avinu. And Hashem said, I think it's good to open it with his birthday. Okay, for whatever reason, it's not for now. But says the Medrash, but the Medrash says the month of Kislev was embarrassed. Imagine you have the Mishkan finished in your month, And Hashem says, no, not Kislev. You're not worthy. We have to wait for Nisan. So Kislev was very embarrassed. So says the Medrash, the Kislev went to Hashem and said, well, why? That's not fair. And Hashem said, don't worry. Shilem Hashem yizbar scharai b'chinuch b'yesheni b'zman ha'chashmonoyim. Hashem said, don't worry. I'm going to coronate a Beis HaMikdash in your month, in the month of Kislev, and that's Chanukah. Chanukah was a re-inauguration with the second Beis HaMikdash. So the Mishkan was finished in Kislev, but it was not inaugurated till Nisan, and Kislev was embarrassed, and Hashem said, don't worry. You'll get Chanukah. That's the second Beis HaMikdash. But then the Medrash continues. Skip the brackets. I'm sorry. And this is the Iker Bayesheni. Because that which they coronated during the Anshe Knesset Agdoila, Adayin Hoyu Avodim Amalchi Poras. V'hinei Bayis Harishin. Let's keep going. So the Mishkan is finished during Kislev. It's not inaugurated till Nisan. Kislev was embarrassed, and Hashem said, don't worry, you'll get the second Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash, Bana Shloima Melech builds. The first Beis HaMikdash, when was it done? Nishleim b'chodesh zeh mar Cheshvon. It was finished during the month of Cheshvon. As the pasuk says, Yerach Bul. It was finished in the month of Bul. It was finished in the month of Cheshvon. The first Beis HaMikdash was completed during the month of Cheshvon. But when was it inaugurated? But says the Medrash, Bayis Rishon Shloim. V'al pi ruach hakodesh lechinchu shloim ad Yerach Eisanim Tishrei. The first Beis HaMikdash was finished during Cheshvon. But it was not inaugurated till 10 months later, till the month of Tishrei. So says the Medrash, Cheshvon was embarrassed, and Cheshvon said, that's not fair. The first Beis HaMikdash was done in my month. Why is it not inaugurated until Tishrei? So says the Medrash, V'yamar Cheshvon mizbayish. V'evtiach Hashem yizbarach l'shalim schorei la'asid b'mheir b'yameinu b'binyan hagimel. To that, the Medrash says, Hashem said to the month of Cheshvon, don't worry. The Bayis Shlishi will be rebuilt in your month. So the Mishkan was coronated in Nisan, but it was built in Kislev. The first Beis HaMikdash was finished in Cheshvon, but it was not coronated till Tishrei. And the second Beis HaMikdash was coronated in Kislev. So the first Beis HaMikdash was finished in Cheshvon, but it wasn't inaugurated till 10 months later. So the Medrash says that Cheshvon was embarrassed. It's not fair. So what did Hashem say? Don't worry. The Bayis Shlishi will be rebuilt in your month. Imkei nire mevur bezeh. By the way, it's an empty month. It's not empty. It's waiting. It's like a plot of land that is ready for a full Beis HaMikdash to come down. Nire mevur bezeh. So says the Bnei Yissaschar, you see from this Medrash, Dechinich Bayis Hagimel b'mheir b'yameinu yeh b'mar Cheshvon. That this month, and we still have time, that's why I wanted to learn this, we still have time until Monday. Some Mashiach can come always, but until Monday, there's time for the Bayis Shlishi to come down. Which, by the way, the inauguration of all three Batei Mikdashes are in the first 3 months of the year. The first Beis HaMikdash was inaugurated during Tishrei. The second Beis HaMikdash with Chanukah is Kislev, and the third Beis HaMikdash is Cheshvon. Tishrei, Cheshvon, Kislev. The first 3 months. Now, by the way, who is the months? Who do they correspond to? We know that each month corresponds to a different shevet. Tishrei, Cheshvon, Kislev is Binyamin, Menashe, and Ephraim, which is all Rachel Imenu. Rachel Imenu, Akeres Abai, is the Iker of the house of Yaakov Avinu. That's the first 3 months. So what do you see? It's Dafka during the month of Cheshvon, where Klal Yisrael had an afila, that there was a letter Nun, that we were moirid, we rejected David Hamelech, but it's Dafka in that month that David HaMelech's kingdom will be rebuilt. The Mashiach will come and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash Dafka in this month, because the very falling will be the source of how it will be rebuilt. And therefore, he started off the Sefer Yetzirah, Hamelech ois Nun, that the letter Nun, the Nefila, that this month represented a Nefila, a falling, that the kingdom of David split in this month, but Hamelech, it will be recoronated in this month, b'mheir b'yameinu, when Mashiach comes and rebuilds the Bayis Shlishi. And he says in Marmakim number 5, Lefiza Tizboinin, says the Bnei Yissaschar, you see from this, therefore it's not a coincidence that Stavk in the month of Cheshvon, that the Klal Yisrael rejected, and we sinned, and we said, Re'ei Beis David, that we don't want David, and we don't want his house, Chalila. Al Kain Be'ez Hatikun. And there was a Nefila, there was a letter Nun, there was Neiflim. But therefore it's dafka in this month that it is Hamelech, that it's rebuilt, that it's a coronation. Hetikun b'mheiri b'yameinu yimlach melech beis David Mashiach Tzidkenu. That this is the month that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will rebuild that kingdom with Mashiach Tzidkenu v'yischanech habayis b'marcha eshen v'yitikam olam b'malchus. And then all of a sudden David HaMelech's kingdom comes back. That's Hamelech ois nun. But how did Hashem coronate it? With reyach, with aroma. So when you learn a sefer enough, you'll see this, Bez Hashem, with Rav Dov on Monday. If you learn enough, Nesiv Shalom, you get patterns. They're patterns. Bnei Yissaschar has patterns too. It's harder because it's a hekif. But one of the patterns of the Bnei Yissaschar is that he talks about aroma. Aroma, reyach. And just to summarize it very quickly, and that is that we know that David HaMelech's kingdom, which is going to be rebuilt in this month of Cheshvon, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, we know that Adam Rishon is Aleph Daled Mem. He came back 3 times. Adam, David HaMelech, and Mashiach, Aleph Daled Mem. Which means that the mistake of Adam Rishon began to be fixed by David and it'll be completed by Mashiach, which means that this is the month that Mashiach Tzidkenu fixes David and fixes Adam Rishon. One of the things, you see, obviously we're all trying to fix that mistake of Adam Rishon. Bnei Yissaschar says an amazing thing. He says this numerous times throughout his Sfarim. It's like 6 or 7 times. If you come, I've mentioned it probably 6 or 7 times as well. That when Adam Rishon sinned, the pasuk described there's 5 senses, right? There's sight, hearing, smelling, touching, and eating, right? That's those 5, and smell. I'm sorry, those 5. The pasuk describes how the sin of Adam Rishon, it describes 4 out of the 5 senses being involved. He saw, he ate, he heard Ayeka, he heard Chava, and he touched the tree. But there's no reference to the sense of smell being involved in the sin. So out of all the senses, that was the one that was not really nifkan, that was not really affected by the sin. Now it's affected just based on the fact, by proxy, the fact that it's connected to a body in a flawed world. But on its own, it's the only one that's the closest to being what it used to be. He writes in Marmakum number 6, this is throughout his Svarim, but he describes it very succinctly. Yedua, it's known, me'inyan chet Adam Rishon, that the sin of Adam Rishon, which will be fixed in this month by Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is the Gilgal of Adam Rishon, that Adam Rishon caused this great sin that deteriorated all of the world. And he brought death and cataclysmic changes. The pasuk says about Mashiach a wondrous thing, and the Gemara Sanhedrin describes this. The pasuk says about Mashiach, Harichu b'yiras Hashem, and says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Mashiach Tzidkenu, when he comes, he'll be able to smell Yiras Shamayim. You could walk past him. You know, it's like when I was younger, you thought as like a student, we used to have Harry Potter books. That was our whole class had Harry Potter books. We would read under our desk, and we thought we were so clever. And our Rabbi knew people, but sometimes you get away with stuff. See, people can be fake, and people can get away with a lot of things. And then you feel like you find out the scandal, like, oh wow, I thought he was a chashav yid, and turns out but he fooled everybody. Mashiach Tzidkenu, the Gemara says, will be able to smell Yiras Shamayim. You walk past him, he'll be able to smell who fears heaven. So what does this mean, to smell Yiras Shamayim? Why is that the sense that Mashiach Tzidkenu was going to be very proficient? So it says, why is it that the sense of Mashiach Tzidkenu that will be the strongest will be the sense of aroma? Because the pasuk describes how the sin of Adam Rishon involved 4 out of the 5 senses, except for the sense of smell. Because that's the only one that is not explicitly written that was involved in the sin of the Eitz Hadas. And therefore it's the one that was the least affected. It's still affected slightly just because it's on your face. And if your face is ruined, your sense of smell will also be ruined. But it's the most himmeldik, it's the most godlike out of all the senses. That's why he says that's why it's the most spiritual of the senses. He writes in the footnote over there, it's a very famous side of his, the Gemara in Brachis asks a kasha, how do I know that you have to make a bracha on besamim. So the Gemara says, Kol haneshama tahalal ka. My neshama will praise you. Ezu davar shaneshama nenes boy. What's the one thing that you consume that your soul enjoys, not your body? It's the sense of smell. That's a Gemara. So Bnei Yisrael says a kasha. He says, I don't understand. There's no source for a bracha on food, right? It's derabana. Why is it that Chazal instituted a bracha on food? The Gemara says because Chazal understood it's not right to go into God's house and take something without asking permission. It's a derabana. Is there a source, is there a pasuk that says that when you see a rainbow, you should make a bracha? No. Is there a source that when you see a mountain, you should make a bracha? No. Is there a source that when you hear thunder? No, it's all Chazal. It's what Chazal understood. Why is it that there's a pasuk to tell you that you have to make a bracha on besam? Why is it the one thing you need a pasuk for? There's a bracha on all things. Chazal understood that if you benefit from this world, it's stealing without paying it back. Why would I need a pasuk? Call a neshama. So it says, Bnei Yisrael, so you have to understand. You see this water right over here, the Baal Tanya describes this water as klipas noiga, which means potential. It's not good, it's not bad. It has some good, it has some bad, and it just depends on what you do with it, right? Mitzvahs are good, averis are bad. What is this? It's neutral. It's called klipas noiga. Klipa means shell, evil. Noiga means a spark. It has both. Your objective in life is to make a bracha and to reveal the good in this water. That's not just true by water, that's true with everything. Brachas are necessary in order to reveal the godliness and to be mivarer, to sift through the negative and to reveal the good. The Gemara asks a question, how do I know you have to make a bracha on besamim? Is not how do I know you need to make a bracha. Maybe besamim doesn't need a bracha, because maybe the sense of smell is so perfect it doesn't need refinement. You see, bracha, while it's a nice thing, it also means that there's bad and good in here, and it needs sifting. It needs spiritual cleaning. So the Gemara, when asked the question, how do I know you make a bracha on besamim, is not how do I know you need a source. It's maybe besamim doesn't need a bracha. Maybe it's pure. It doesn't need refinement. To that, the Gemara says, no, it still needs it because it's affected by the body. But you see over here that of all the senses, the one that's the most connected to Mashiach, the one that's most connected to that world that was and the world that will be is the sense of smell. And he says over here, Mizetis Bainin Gamkein, Saida Besamim Motzei Shabbos. And that's why, by the way, we do Besamim on when Shabbos is about to end. Right? As Shabbos is over. Right? Before you're going into this new week. This week was created by the sin of Adam Rishon. Right? Before a person goes into this difficult post-sin reality, that for 25 hours we get to sort of taste the world that was. So before you go into it, what do we do by Besamim? What do we do by Havdalah? We do Besamim. Why? It says in the Mishabura, to give you a little pick-me-up before you go. A little sad, your neshama is a little sad, needs a little pick-me-up. It's a pshat. The answer is that the sense of smell is the most like sustained, it's the most, it's like a picture. It's like a fossil. It's the most crystallized of the world that was. And therefore, before you go into that week, you want just one last little hurrah, one last little taste of that perfect sense called the Chushareach. But now you understand we're working through the Sefer Yetzirah. The month of Cheshvon, which is the month that we rejected the kingdom of David. And that's why there's a lot of difficulties. And we've had a difficult month. This has not been an exception. This month has been a very, very difficult month for Klal Yisrael. But it's also the month that the Bayis Shlishi will be rebuilt. Therefore, it's Ois Nun. It's a month of Nefila, but it's Hamelech Ois Nun. It's the month that Hashem will recoronate that month by bringing back Mashiach Tzidkeinu B'Reach. And the sense of smell will be brought back to the world. But let's keep going. The Kosher Keser and the crown of Mashiach is placed. V'tzarfon zebezeh. And everyone is united again. V'tzar by Akrev ba'olam. And the scorpion is placed. Now, what's the akrev? Akrev, ayin kuf reish beis, which means a scorpion, is also two words. Iker beis. Iker bayis. The Iker house that we're waiting for. Iker, the main letter beis, which is beis, you have tough. Bayis. The Iker bayis that we're waiting for will be brought back. The scorpion, akrev, is really Iker bayis. Not the first Beis HaMikdash, not the second Beis HaMikdash, the Iker Bayis. He says in Maramakim number 7, V'tzar by Akrev ba'olam. Hine hamazel shel chodesh mar Cheshvon. Akrev Iker Bayis. The Iker house, the main house. Remez says the Bnei Yissaschar, Iker Bayis hamakuva, yeh b'chodesh zachinucha. That the main house that we're waiting for, the house of Bayis Shlishi, is going to be in this month. Then he continues further. Akriv, scorpion, is also Gematria, David Mashiach. Because that's the month that David Mashiach will come back. But now it says an amazing thing. Let's go to number 9 and then we'll come back to number 8. This is an amazing aside. And then I want to come to number 8 because I want to end with number 8 because 8 I think is very important. Number 9, I mentioned that in Tanakh, the month of Mar Cheshvon, that we still have a few days left, is called Bul, Beis Vav Lamed. And that's how it's translated, Bul, B-U-L. And Rashi says, what's Bul? It's Mivaleh, which means to decay. Because the grass begins to decay. The Bnei Yissaschar says something amazing. It says Bnei Yissaschar, Marmakum number 9. Nearly apiyad dvarim. Now that we know that the main concept of this month, that if someone asks you what is Mar Cheshvan about, instead of saying it's the month that has no Yom Tovim, it's the month that Bayis Shlishi will be rebuilt. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, because the month, the house that we're waiting for, the Akriv, the Iker Bayis, is going to be in this month. This is known. Someone mentioned to me that he feels like every shir that he's ever come to by me, I've mentioned this Yesod. I guess it's a coincidence, but Bayis Rishon corresponds to Avram Avinu. The second Beis HaMikdash corresponds to Yitzchak Avinu. And the third Beis HaMikdash corresponds to Yaakov Avinu. Now I've mentioned this, and the Gemara says, the Gemara in Psachim, that Avram Avinu described the Beis HaMikdash as a har, a mountain you can't live by, so it didn't last. Yitzchak, it says, "Vayetze Yitzchak lo suach basada" in this parsha. So he davened by the Mokem HaMikdash, and he called it Hasada. Now a field you can live in a little bit longer than you can a mountain, but it's still not a house, so it won't last either. But Yaakov Avinu, Tiken Bayis La'ad, Yaakov called the Beis HaMikdash a house, and therefore it'll last forever. And I've mentioned this from the Maral, that was the very downfall of the Batei Mikdashes. Avram Avinu was chesed, but the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, was a chesed that spilled out. Yitzchak is gevura, and therefore it was sinas chinam. They kept details of halacha, but they had sinas chinam. Yaakov Avinu is tiferes, and I've mentioned many times, Yaakov Avinu is not its own thing. Yaakov Avinu is, you have on the right side chesed, you have the left side gevura, and Yaakov Avinu is the ability to make like a triangle, to take a little bit of chesed, a little bit of gevura, and to find the perfect unity. That's why I've mentioned, the Nesiv Shalom talks about this, how Avram Avinu is always digging wells, Yitzchak is always digging wells, and Yaakov is uncovering wells. He's not digging anything of his own. He is just being megala, that which Avram and Yitzchak created. He's just using it in the proper function, in the proper order. Yaakov Avinu takes the beginning, and he takes the end, and he takes the middle, and he makes it perfect. It's not, Tiferes is not, the Bayis Shlishi will not be a new thing. It'll take the best of the Bayis Rishon, the best of the Bayis Sheni, and make a combination of the two. So he says like this, V'hine Yedu Mashamru Chazal Bayis Rishon neged Avram Shekoru Har V'lei Niskayim Bayis Sheni neged Yitzchak Shekoru Sadav V'lei Niskayim Bayis Shlishi Meher B'meinu neged Yaakov. This month we're going to have a Bayis Shlishi correspond to Yaakov Avinu, that he called it a house, be a kaim la'ad, and it'll last forever. T'chsev Titen Emes Yaakov. What is Yaakov? Yaakov is Torah. Torah is the ability to know when to do what, right? Because no, seriously, you have Avram, which is Chesed, Yaakov, Yitzchak, which is Avodah, which is Tefillah. But sometimes Chesed is good, and sometimes it's not good. Sometimes davening is good, sometimes it's not good. How do you know when to do what? It's called halacha. Yeah, you have to know when to daven shachas and daven mincha, when to do this, when to do that. That's Torah. That's Yaakov Avinu's Tiferes, the ability to take A and take B and take C and make it blend together. Kushtakoi. Yaakov is emes. Emes lasts forever. He says like this, Lefiza Tavin. So in this month, we're going to be taking everything that's ever happened in the history of the world and put it together in a perfect blend. Everything in the history of the world is found in Torah. What's the first letter of the Torah? Bereshis. That's Beis. What's the last letter of the Torah? Yisrael, Lamed, Lamed. What's the middle letter of the Torah? Vav, of the letter Gachain. Beis, Vav, Lamed, Bul. It's the month where the beginning Torah, the end of Torah, and the middle of Torah all comes together in their perfect unity. Nothing new. but the ability to take everything that's ever happened and to blend it together. It's the month of Bull. Beis Vav Lamed, which is the month of Mar Cheshvon. We have Bereshis, you have Yisro, and you have the Vav of Gachain, all coming together in a perfect blend. Bull. Now we'll end with this. Tsar Be'akrav Ba'olam, says the Sefer Yetzirah. And what is the month of Cheshvan? It's the intestines of the soul. Dakin Shebenefesh. What does that mean? So you know what it means? I mentioned that during the month of Cheshvan, the Iker downfall of Cheshvan is that we rejected the kingdom of David, which was a terrible thing because it's rejecting our kingdom, our king. But more than that, it created a split and a chasm within Klal Yisrael. Probably very similar to what we saw 2 months ago within Klal Yisrael. That you have the kingdom of David, you have the kingdom of Yisrael. The kingdom of David was connected to David Hamelech. The kingdom of Yisrael was connected to Yeravam. And you had that within Eretz Yisrael. You had 2 different kingdoms. And they did not get along whatsoever. That there was the kingdom of David, the kingdom of Yisrael, and they were mamish fighting. But during the month of Cheshvan, not only will Mashiach come and bring back the kingdom of David, there will be an achdus within Klal Yisrael Dafka during this month. And he says over here in Marmak number 8, Yisrael b'pikamam v'nischalku b'meriva malchus beis David. One of the cataclysmic elements of the rejection of David was not just a rejection of our king, but it was a civil war. Is that there was a sinas chinam amongst Klal Yisrael, a split. Bizman hatikun, and therefore during this month, which is metak in the kingdom of David, ha'ikar she Yisrael ba'achdus. The main catalyst to fix this will be achdus of Klal Yisrael. Not just accepting David for what David represents, but just getting together, a unity of Klal Yisrael. V'zeremizas hadakin. The part of the body that alludes to achdus is the intestines. If there's any other body, then it rests on each other. It rests on each other. If you take the intestines, you pull it out, it's one. But if you ever seen the intestines, they rest on each other. But even from a halachic perspective, a very fascinating thing, from a halacha in Yeridea, the halacha is that if an animal has a puncture in its lungs, it's treif, you can't eat it. What if there's a puncture in the intestines? The halacha is it's kosher. Why? Because a puncture in one intestine is covered up and protected by the intestines above it. So let's say my middle finger, these are intestines, and there's a puncture in the middle finger over here. It's fine because the intestines above and the intestines below will squeeze it and protect it. The intestines cover up each other's flaws. The achdus of Klal Yisrael is symbolized by intestines because they're misachid, they unite, and they protect each other and cover up for each other's flaws. So he says, Mogin al chaveroi. And therefore this is the month where it's the intestines of the soul. It's where the souls of Klal Yisrael will be misached, will be uniting together. He also says an amazing thing that dak, which means intestines, is also what gematria 104. What's the 104th mitzvah in the Rambam, Sefer HaMitzvahs? Ketores. Ketores is the incense, which is all about aroma, which is about Mashiach, but we also know that within the incense there was the chelvana. The chelvana smelled bad, and it symbolizes those Jews that are deficient, that are not necessarily very observant. But what happens when they're part of Klal? They unite, and you can't have a ketores without the chelvana. So it symbolizes the achdus of Klal Yisrael, and that's the numerical value of 104 dak, because that's the intestines. They unite and protect. This month is Hamelech nun bereach, kosher like keser v'tzirfim zebezeh, tsar by akrav ba'olam, mar cheshem mishana v'dakim v'nefesh. And it's the intestines of the soul, because that will be the month where Klal Yisrael misachid together, where they unite together, and in that schos HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings back the kingdom of David, which unites Klal Yisrael, and ultimately the Bayis Hashlishi will be rebuilt in this month, because once Klal Yisrael's achdus, then there's nothing stopping it. We still have time. I'm going to talk about this on Shabbos a little bit, that people get less focused as time goes on, but the avodah is to be mechazik yourself, to remind yourself of where we were 3 weeks ago, and that mentality that we need to continue. And Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael still has achdus, and we need to continue still having achdus, because we might be tired, but nothing changed. Nothing changed at all. And that's something to remember, that people like to move on. There's no moving on, and therefore Klal Yisrael, the way to fix this was with achdus, will be with achdus, and in that schus, if you become the dakin shebenefesh, then it's mogin al chaveroi, it fixes the flaws of each other, and then it's in that schus the animal will be kosher. No more treifus, animal will be kosher legamri, bias kol tzaddik meher b'yameinu. Amen.